So today I want to speak about Cesar Picton. So welcome, this is my first video based upon the blue plaques, which I'm going to be driving around in and around London and all around the UK to bring these blue plaques to life and speak about the different people that would have lived and died at these locations. The first person I'm going to speak about is a person called Cesar Picton. Now, Cesar Picton has an interesting life. First of all, let me just start with the story how I came across Cesar Picton. I was driving through Thames Ditton on the way to work, and I came across this really prominent house which is standing in the middle of the square as you drive through. Couldn't see what the plaque was, but I knew there was a plaque. You could see the plaque from a distance. But obviously there was it's an old village, so there's obviously bigger buildings and older buildings that are there. But this house seems to be really grand. There was something about it which really stood out. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to start working and doing videos starting from roughly where I live. So I thought I'll start with this house because it seemed to be drilling it into me and seemed to be talking to me. So I thought, let me just record something based upon this house, as you can see. So let me talk about Cesar Picton, which is interesting because what I later found out was that he was actually a slave, and he was one of the ones who in the 17th century he was freed and then started his own business and then eventually became a very wealthy and powerful individual. So let me speak about him from the beginning. Now, Cesar Picton was born in Senegal in West Africa. They say roughly in the early 17th century, and they said roughly age 6 was brought to the UK as a slave in 1761. He was taken by Captain Parr, and when he arrived at the UK, he was just dressed in a sack. That's what the slaves were dressed as. Now, as far as we are aware, there's no 100% proof, but according to Picton, he told me said that he had, I think, 2 sisters and a brother. And his mum and dad, he never saw again, as he was stolen from his parents back in the 17th century. And again, remember, in the 17th century, as being a slave, you was the property of the slave owner. So you didn't have much rights. You just had to just crack on and do what they wanted to do with you. And you were sold, no matter where you were sold into, working in the cotton fields, you was either sold around the British Empire, or you could have been working in the house if you was lucky. So and if you was lucky, you become free. So we all know it was a terrible time, and we all know that slavery is, thank God, it's abolished, and it's something that should never happen again. But unfortunately, it still happens and continues in certain parts of the world. Let me just speak about Cesar Picton. So Cesar Picton came to the UK, as I said, in 1761 as a slave with just a sack on as his clothing. The interesting thing was a gentleman, a very powerful gentleman called Sir John Phillips, brought Cesar and freed him, sent him off to school for him to be educated as a gentleman. Cesar, now let me just tell you about Sir John Phillips. Sir John Phillips was either the 6th or the 4th baronet, and he also was a member of Parliament. So some say he was a lawyer, but he also had a house in Kingston. When he freed Picton, he went to work at Picton's house as a servant and was given a wage. So obviously with the wage which Cesar was given, he invested it and learned ways to be a merchant, and then begun selling coal. Now Cesar got the name Cesar Picton. It was given to him by Sir John Phillips. Now, Sir John Phillips had a castle in Wales called Picton Castle. Now, in them days, to be given someone of nobility or even a slave a name of an ancestral home was a very, very, very inspiring and groundbreaking thing to do. But, as I said, Sir John Phillips and his wife opposed slavery. So as I said, he went off to work and he studied, and then he became a gentleman. This was Cesar. And with the money that he earned, he went off to start his own company, trading coal, which wasn't far from the local ports, which would come into Kingston and Thames Ditton. And remember, Thames Ditton is not far from Hampton Court Palace. So you would have got a lot of trade coming through, silks, coal, spices, sugar, all those things will come through. This is around the times of the East India Company, remember that as well. Think about it, the time of Jack Sparrow, Pirates of the Caribbean, that type of thing. So when he set up his own business in coal, that's where he made his money. And unfortunately, he faced tragedy. And at the age of 34, a good friend of his and wife of Sir John Phillips, who was Lady Phillips, died. But what was interesting is that she left him money in her will, and this was about £100. So arguments, people, I believe, is about £1 million in today's money. So what did Cesar do? Cesar decides to buy property. So he bought a house, the Grand House, as you can see. Now, he bought this Grand House, obviously, to show he's powerful, his wealth, and that he made it into society. Now, there's no 100% proof that he didn't have a hand in helping other slaves or freedom, helped other slaves into freedom. Knowing that Sir John Phillips did and was heavily involved in it, I would kind of edge the bet to say John Phillips said, like, look, you know what, you was freed, be careful, let work through me. And I would assume that's how they may have worked, because I don't feel Cesar would have put his life on the line in order to help other slaves, because he would have done it in other ways, maybe through his business and employing people that way and giving them a wage for them to start their own business. That's probably the way he may have done it. There's no proof of that. It's just something I would just think he would have done. Knowing that someone done him a favor to get him out of slavery, I'm kind of sure that's what he would have done. So what was important about this situation? So Cesar, unfortunately, passed away on the 10th of June in 1836 at the age of 81. Now, what I thought was amazing about him dying was the age he died at. Remember, this is in the 17th century. We're talking about 18, it was probably about 1816, because he bought the house in 1816 and he died in 1836. So that's 20 years. So in the 18th century, 17th to 18th century, people living into their 80s is unique. So people were dying at the age of 50s, pushing it 60s. For a slave to die, or a black man to die into his 80s and be in a position of power, was amazing to say one in itself. Now, Cesar was buried at All Saints Church in Kingston. As you can see up here is his effigy, or his tombstone, and it's Kingston in Surrey. So that was about 125 years ago, which I believe this year will be the 125th anniversary. I just wanted to just kind of put this out as my first video, because it's really important to me with all the, obviously, Black Lives Matters and all things of that nature. And obviously how this came about, I had no intention of looking at it as in some kind of way talking about slavery, but just knowing, as I mentioned, me driving past, seeing a house, being really drawn to the house, then looking at who lived there, thought Cesar Picton, it's a bit of a weird name, then looked at who he was, and to be shocked, being a black man, was very much a surprise for me. So I'm going to do other videos, and I'm going to be going around showing what kind of videos, what these blue plaques are about. I'm due to record one based upon who started the blue plaques and how it came about. So hang on for that. I just wanted to release this first so you guys can get a first snippet. I'll see you in the next video. Stay safe.